Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every soul's journey when the weight we carry becomes too heavy. Yet strangely, it is not the burden of others, but our own need for control, certainty, and outcome. And in that moment, when we finally loosen our grip, something remarkable occurs, not outside of us, but within us, and then, curiously, the outer world begins to shift as well. Let me take you on an inward journey. The phrase letting go does not mean defeat. It means surrender to a deeper intelligence that we often ignore, the mysterious dance between our inner world and the greater cosmos. And when we let go, the universe responds in 5 profound ways. When you let go, when you release your grip on the illusions of certainty and control, the first response from the universe is not external reward, but internal reckoning. The immediate echo is silence, a silence that begins to stir the waters of your soul, and from these depths, something emerges that you have long avoided, the shadow. This shadow is not a monster to be feared, but a mirror held up by life itself. It contains everything you denied, rejected, or exiled within yourself. Your forgotten fears, suppressed desires, buried wounds, and quiet griefs. These do not vanish just because you ignore them. They live in the dark corners of the psyche, shaping your choices, haunting your relationships, and fueling your anxieties from beneath the surface. To let go is to stop resisting this inner tide. It is to allow the unconscious to rise and speak, not in words, but in symbols, dreams, impulses, and emotion. It may appear as sudden anger that you don't understand, or a sadness that feels too deep for any single event. It may come as unexpected memories, or as patterns in your life that you can no longer dismiss as coincidence. And yet, this unveiling is not meant to harm. It is meant to heal. The universe does not expose you to your shadow to punish you. It does so to restore you. You cannot become whole by polishing only what is already bright. You must also bring light to what has been left in darkness. What you begin to see is that your shadow is not the enemy. It is your own unlived life. It is the creative energy trapped beneath your fears. It is the passion repressed under years of trying to be good, strong, or perfect. It is the parts of you that once felt unsafe to express, because the world misunderstood them or because your own mind labeled them as shameful. But once seen, the shadow loses its power to sabotage. It no longer has to erupt through projection, conflict, or inner division. You begin to reclaim your authenticity, not by adding something new, but by recovering what was always there. You become less reactive, more compassionate, more grounded, not because life becomes easier, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. This is how the universe begins to respond when you let go. It invites you to face your inner truth, not as judgment, but as liberation. And though the journey through shadow may feel like darkness, it is in fact the path back to your own inner light. You do not awaken by denying your shadow, but by befriending it. You do not grow by clinging to false light, but by daring to illuminate the depths. Only when you have met the shadow within can you begin to meet the world without with true presence and peace. When you release your tight hold on life's outcomes, when you finally surrender the need to force, predict, and manipulate the path ahead, something subtle yet extraordinary begins to unfold. You enter into a different relationship with time, with events, with meaning itself. The world, once perceived as random and indifferent, starts to feel strangely responsive, even intimate. This is when synchronicity begins to arise. What you once dismissed as coincidence now takes on a different texture. A certain word keeps appearing. A person you were just thinking about suddenly calls. You pick up a book and find a sentence that speaks directly to your innermost question. You arrive at a place you've never been, only to find something there that feels uncannily familiar. These moments are not loud. They do not demand attention, but when you are inwardly attuned, when your mind has quieted and your heart has softened, you notice them. These are not accidents. These are responses. The outer world reflects the inner world in ways that logic cannot explain. What is significant is not the event itself, but the meaning it carries for you, and meaning in its deepest sense is not manufactured, it is discovered. It emerges when you are in alignment with your inner self, when your unconscious and conscious are no longer in conflict, but speaking to one another in symbols, in signs, in encounters that feel almost orchestrated. You begin to understand that life is not a sequence of disconnected incidents. It is a web of relationships, invisible threads that connect people, moments, and inner states. When you let go of rigid plans and anxious striving, you allow yourself to move with this current rather than against it. You are guided not by rigid maps, but by intuitive signals. What feels right, what draws you in, what resonates beyond reason. Synchronicity does not offer certainty. It offers meaningful connection. It whispers rather than shouts. And those whispers grow clearer the more you stop demanding proof and start trusting presence. You are no longer just acting upon the world. You are in conversation with it. Your role shifts from controlling life to participating in its unfolding with openness and trust. This does not mean that every moment is magical or every coincidence profound. It means you develop a sensitivity to depth. You see beneath the surface of events and understand that something deeper may be at play. You follow these threads not blindly, but with awareness, and in doing so, you walk a path that feels more alive, more intimate, more attuned to who you really are becoming. The universe is not speaking to you in formulas. It speaks in patterns, in rhythms, in timing that defies calculation. And when you are willing to listen without demanding, and to receive without needing control, you begin to realize life is not happening to you. It is unfolding with you. When you let go, truly let go, not just in word or intention, but in the silent surrender of your being, something deeply unsettling begins to occur. It is not immediate bliss, nor is it the clarity many expect. It is dismantling the familiar structures of your identity, the roles you've worn like armor, the masks you've crafted so carefully for acceptance, recognition, or protection. These begin to crack. This is not a loss, though it will feel like one. It is the unmaking of the false self. The false self is not evil. It was born from necessity. It is the part of you that learned how to survive in a world that may not have understood your essence. It is the persona you developed to be loved, to be safe, to belong. It mimicked approval, avoided rejection, and often silenced your deeper truths to maintain harmony or avoid conflict. It performed strength when you felt weak. It performed kindness when you felt rage. It said yes when your soul screamed no. But when you stop clinging to what should be, when you stop chasing validation and fearing disapproval, the performance becomes unbearable. The costume grows heavy. The applause starts to feel hollow, and the parts of you that have been waiting, quietly and patiently, beneath the surface, your unfiltered feelings, your forgotten passions, your natural rhythms, begin to rise. This unraveling can feel like a death, and in a sense it is. It is the death of who you thought you had to be. You may feel lost, disoriented, exposed. You may no longer recognize yourself in the mirror of your old relationships, your work, or even your thoughts. What once felt like you now feels foreign, empty, performative. This is the sacred discomfort of awakening, not the shining image sold in stories, but the raw, honest, trembling truth of becoming real. The universe does not remove your identity to leave you barren. It clears away the artificial so the authentic can breathe. In the space where the false self once dominated, something gentler and far more powerful begins to emerge. Not another mask, not a better version of the persona, but the original self, the rooted self, the one that existed before the world told you who to be. This self may at first feel small, uncertain, and even vulnerable. But it is grounded in something the false self never knew, inner peace. It does not strive to be accepted because it already belongs. It does not seek to impress because it expresses. It does not ask permission to exist, it simply lives. You begin to live not from performance but from presence, not from image but from essence, and what returns to you in this space is clarity, not always of what to do next, but of what is real and what is not. You stop needing to be seen in a certain way. You stop needing to prove yourself. You start listening to your own rhythms, respecting your own limits, trusting your own desires without justification. This is the response of the universe when you let go. It does not reward your surrender with instant ease, but with honest reflection. It brings down what was never truly yours and invites you into the tender, courageous task of becoming who you have always been, beneath the fear, beneath the act, beneath the noise. And though this path is not easy, it is real. And in being real, it becomes the only path worth walking. When you finally let go of chasing, of forcing, of needing to have all the answers, there is a moment, often unsettling, when everything grows quiet. Not just externally, but internally. The noise within the plans, the panic, the rehearsed inner dialogues, all begin to fade. What replaces it is not immediate peace, but a profound stillness. And for many, this stillness is mistaken as emptiness, as stagnation, as failure to move forward. But in truth, it is the beginning of something far more powerful than constant striving. Stillness is not the absence of motion, but the presence of depth. It is the place where your energy gathers, where your fragmented self begins to unify. It is where clarity is born, not from mental effort, but from the gentle unfolding of truth that was always there, waiting beneath the surface. The world teaches us to move faster, do more, and equates rest with laziness. But when you let go and allow yourself to dwell in stillness, you begin to see that your worth was never tied to your speed, and your value never depended on your productivity. In stillness, time stretches. You are no longer racing against it. You begin to notice things, subtle feelings, quiet desires, truths that whispered before but were drowned out by your own urgency. This is the realm of the soul. It does not speak in demands or deadlines, but in nudges, in sensations, in gentle but undeniable knowing. And because you are no longer running, you finally hear it. The power of stillness is not in doing nothing. It is in allowing what is essential to rise without resistance. You begin to respond rather than react. You move with intention rather than impulse. You begin to see that many of your past decisions were not born of wisdom, but of fear. Fear of being left behind, of being forgotten, of not being enough. But from stillness, those fears begin to lose their grip. You recognize that stillness is not a void. It is a field of potential. You become like the tree that does not chase the wind, but stands rooted, steady, drawing life from invisible sources beneath the soil. Or like the mountain, unmoved by the changing weather around it, grounded in its own being. In this stillness, your intuition sharpens, your creativity awakens, and when action does come, it is no longer hurried but precise. It carries weight, it carries truth, it arises not from anxiety, but from alignment. This shift from noise to stillness, from effort to presence, is where true power lies, the kind of power that does not dominate, but transforms. The kind that does not burn out, but sustains. It is the quiet confidence that does not need to shout, the calm resolve that does not collapse under pressure. It is the strength of knowing you do not need to chase what is already moving toward you. When you live from stillness, you begin to understand that some of the most important changes happen not when you're pushing forward, but when you're sitting still and allowing the dust to settle. Only then can you see what truly matters. Only then can you feel what is genuinely calling you. And so, when the universe senses your surrender, it does not always flood you with answers. Sometimes it grants you silence. But it is a sacred silence, full of energy, full of direction, if you are willing to be patient, to listen, and to trust that your deepest wisdom does not arise from control, but from calm. Stillness, then, is not the opposite of progress. It is the soil in which real progress begins to root. When you truly let go, when you no longer force outcomes, cling to expectations, or chase after validation, something begins to shift, almost imperceptibly at first. Life grows quieter, but not empty. The noise of your own resistance fades, and in its place, something softer, more intimate, begins to arise. It does not shout. It does not demand your attention. It whispers. And in this whisper is the voice of destiny. Destiny is not a grand plan imposed from above. It is not a rigid path laid out in exact steps. It is a movement from within, a magnetic pull towards something deeply personal, something that feels both mysterious and unmistakably right. It begins to make itself known only after you have released the illusions of who you're supposed to be, and what you thought you needed to become. Before letting go, your vision was likely shaped by fear. Fear of failure, of judgment, of not mattering. Your choices may have been guided more by the expectations of others than by your own soul. But once you allow those layers to fall away, you start to hear something underneath the noise. A sense of direction that is not logical, but undeniable. It may come as a quiet certainty, a recurring idea, a feeling that you are meant to move, to create, to serve, to speak, to heal. Not because someone told you to, but because something within you refuses to stay silent. Destiny does not rush, it waits for readiness, and readiness does not come through force, it comes through inner alignment. You do not chase destiny, you become available to it, and when you are, life starts offering you signs, not loud, not theatrical, but perfectly timed. An opportunity that feels like a mirror, a conversation that reawakens something long asleep, a detour that feels more like the real path than the one you spent years planning. It's not always comfortable. In fact, it rarely is. Destiny often calls you away from the familiar. It invites you to grow, to stretch, to shed old skins. It pulls you into spaces where you may feel unsure, yet deeply alive. This is how you know it's real, not because it's easy, but because it awakens your depth. You find yourself saying yes, not out of obligation, but out of recognition. Something in you nods as if remembering what it had long forgotten. The whisper of destiny is not a single moment, it is a dialogue. It continues to speak as long as you continue to listen, and the more you walk toward it, the more it reveals. With every step, new pieces emerge, patterns you didn't see before become visible. Even past pain begins to make sense, not as punishment, but as preparation. You realize that nothing was wasted. Every struggle, every detour, every heartbreak carried a seed that was waiting for this moment to bloom. And so, when you let go, the universe does not shout a new direction. It whispers the one that was always waiting. It speaks not to your fear, but to your truth. Not to your ambition, but to your purpose. You feel less like you're building something from scratch, and more like you're uncovering something that was always there, beneath the striving, beneath the noise of the world's definitions. To hear destiny, you must be willing to be still. To follow it, you must be willing to be brave. It does not demand perfection, only presence, only trust, and as you move with it, step by step, you realize, this is not just the life you were meant to live. This is the life you were always becoming, even when you didn't know it, and now, you do.